What's up guys, my name is Tommy Gerlach and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be looking at very beginner lesson, maybe your first lesson ever of learning the guitar, learning two chords that are must for every guitar player. I'm a Nashville-based guitar player living in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I moved to Nashville in 2020 to pursue my dream of playing guitar for a living. And I'm very fortunate to do that as a guitar player that tours with lots of artists. And I have a book out on Amazon, so I'm an author, and I also teach lots of lessons. So I do that instructor thing as well as doing studio stuff, playing on Broadway in Nashville, doing everything I can to make a living in Nashville playing guitar. So I teach a lot of students, and when I get a student that's brand new to the guitar, they're like, what's the first thing I should do? I want to start playing chords. What do I do? Well, we're going to go over two of the most used chords, and with a capo, you can move them. That will give you the ability to play them in any key. So we're going to start out with a G major chord. And what I'm going to have you do first is make sure your guitar is in tune. So remember that we're wanting to make sure that this low E string, we also call it the sixth string, but low E, sixth string, that's this guy here, and make sure that's a perfect E note. Then the fifth string, we're going to make sure that's an A note. The fourth string, the D string, make sure that's a D note. The third string is our G string, so make sure that's a G note. The second string is our B string, make sure that's a B note. And the high E string is our first string, make sure that's a high E note. So notice the sixth and the first strings are both E's, but we would say low E or high E. So whenever we're referencing the word low or high, even with where we're playing on the neck, low is always going to refer to pitch, and high is going to refer to the higher pitch, so lower pitch, higher pitch. I feel like that's pretty straightforward. So the first thing we're going to do is take our middle finger and place it on the third fret of the low E string. So I want you to understand that that note is a G note, and so we're going to produce a G chord starting from that G note. So to play this chord, we're going to first keep our middle finger on that third fret of the low E string. Then I'm going to take my ring finger and place it on the second fret of the B string. And my pinky also on the third fret, but of the high E string. Now the index is kind of hanging out. What we're going to do is actually just mute the A string so that it doesn't play a note. So we're going to have the low E string with the third fret, middle finger, muting that A string. Then we'll have the open D string, the open G string, our ring finger there on the second string, third fret, and our pinky on the third fret of the high E string. So if I strum all those notes, I get a beautiful G major chord. Now we're muting that string to avoid having the third note of the chord. So just don't worry about it, but a G major chord is built up of G, B, and D notes, but the third note can sometimes sound wonky. So guitar players often will use the chord I'm teaching you, which we could call a G5 chord because it's just built up of G's and D's. If that was a lot, don't worry about it. Forget everything I just said. Just know that we mute that A string so it sounds cooler, basically. So now moving to our C chord, all we're going to do is move these two fingers. So what I'll do is take my middle finger to the third fret of the A string, and my index will follow, moving to the second fret of the D string. Now I have a C chord. We would call this a C add 9. Don't worry about it, just call it a C chord for now. That's cool with me. So what we can do is practice going back and forth from that G shape to that C shape chord. A great way to do this is to grab a metronome and just work on downstrokes. So say the click is going click, 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 click. We could then just strum downstrokes with each chord. So we go G, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then try to move to the C chord. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the practice is going to be being able to switch between those chords without losing that tempo with the right hand. So we want to imagine that this right hand is just locked in. There's nothing that's going to waver this right hand from being perfect with our metronome. So what we're going to need to work on is making sure when we switch chords, I can switch that chord in time, that the right hand can keep moving. In college, my professor would always tell us that if the hand stops moving, the band stops grooving. I think that's such a good way to remember that we need to make sure that right hand is locked in with the metronome. So that's why I'm teaching you these really simple shapes, because it's easy to move there from G to C. Now the last chord I'm going to show you is a D major chord. And think about this. This ring finger is going to stay there from the G chord to the C chord. And now for our D chord, all I'm going to do is take my middle finger, move it to the second fret of the high E string, and move my index to the second fret of the G string. So that ring finger stays anchored there the whole time through all of these chords. So that D chord, we're going to start picking from the open D string. So we'll have the open D string, index again on the second fret of the third string, ring finger on the third fret of the second string, and middle finger on the second fret of the high E string. So there's our beautiful D major chord. So one thing I like to do with my students is I call this the hands-on, hands-off exercise. So what I'll ask you to do is play a G chord, and I'll say hands up, and what I want you to do is take your hands off the instrument to teach yourself how to get back to that chord. So let's try it. So play me a G chord. All right, ready? Hands up. And now go back to the chord. Hands up. Go back to the chord. Let's now go to the C major chord. So again, I just move my middle finger to that third fret of the A string, index on the second fret of the D string, kept my ring finger and pinky on the third fret of the second and high string. Ready? Hands up, and go back to that C chord. Hands up, and go back to that C chord. Excellent, good job, so proud of you. Now let's go to the D major chord. So again, open D string, index on the second fret of the third string, ring finger on the third fret of the second string, and middle finger on the second fret of the high string. Let's drum it. Hands up, back to the D chord, hands up, back to the D chord, hands up, go to the C chord, hands up, and back to the G chord. If any of those were fast, I would say pause the video, work on just trying to switch those chords with that hands up exercise, and you can even do that with yourself without the video. But that is a great resource and a great tool to use to work on those chord changes and making sure we got those down. So now let's put it all together and work on playing through these chords together. So what we're going to do is just play down strokes. And so a measure of music, if we're in 4/4 time, is going to have 4 beats. So what we'll do is we'll give each chord 2 measures. So we'll have the G chord, 1, 2, 3. Second measure, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then our C, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. To our D, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a G. All right, so that was the demo round. Now let's do it together, a little slower. So let's try to go 1, 2, 3, 4, G, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. So our C chord, C, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and D, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, and then a G. Excellent job. I hope this lesson has been killing for you guys and you have a little bit more knowledge about some beginner chord shapes on the guitar. Here are some tips to watch out for practicing. If you're getting any sort of, just not getting those chords as clean, one thing that's going to help you out is making sure you're keeping a great straight line between your wrist and your forearm, and making sure we're not doing this sort of thing, because it's really hard to have my fingers arched and straight up and down if I see a lot of times students will have the thumb over. So making sure that you're giving yourself enough movement with the wrist, that way you can get your fingers more straight up and down on the chord. Another thing too is making sure we're starting the pick from the root note of the chord. A root note is basically just what the chord starts on. So for example, the G chord, the root note is a G. For the C chord, the root note is a C. And for the D chord, the root note is a D note. So making sure you start on those root notes is going to help the chord sound pretty. So if I miss that root note, it doesn't sound as cool. And it's all about sounding cool on the guitar. So those are some ways to make sure that you're playing the chords smoothly. So in recap of what you need to work on to master this video lesson is making sure you feel comfortable moving from a G chord to a C chord to a D chord. And these shapes that I taught you are very common amongst working musicians because they sound powerful. We can get into more proper chords in future lessons. So there's no right or wrong answer. I don't want the comments to be like, this guy, he's leaving out notes, whatever. This is what people play on records. It's a cool way to teach new students. Yes, there are other ways to play a G, C, and D chord. There are no right or wrong answers in music. You're allowed to have the liberty to choose what chords you want to play. This is an easy way to do it, and I hope it helps you progress in your guitar playing. I am also an author. If you're looking to learn more about the guitar, I have a book on Amazon called Amateur to Pro, a 30-day guitar workbook that has a day-by-day practice guide of what I think every guitar player needs to know to get from that amateur to pro phase. I also am on social media. You can click and follow those links as well. I've never done that because this is my first lesson, but if you could like and hit that subscribe button, I'm going to be doing a ton more guitar content on this YouTube page. I'm super excited and thankful that you've watched this video and made it this far. God bless. Have a great week. Know that you're loved and valued, and I'm excited for you to succeed on your guitar journey. Peace out.